Hello, everyone. I'm Sign1News anchor Vanessa Paloma Bajarnik. Here's a quick look at the top trending international news stories in ISL making headlines today. If you post an interesting comment about this update, we may add it at the bottom of the screen. After days and days of protest, French President Emmanuel Macron addressed the nation and called the protest unacceptable and unjustifiable. The protest began on Tuesday after a 17-year-old named Nahel was shot and killed by Nanterre police when he refused to comply with an order to stop while in a car. His death sparked clashes between young people and the police. Stores have been looted and cars set on fire. Hundreds of people have been arrested. Thousands of people marched in a protest wearing white T-shirts with "Justice for Nahel" and the date of the shooting printed on it. In response, Macron says more police will be deployed and parents should keep their children at home away from the riots. He also said social media is inflaming the violence and the most sensitive content will be removed. Nahel's funeral was held on Saturday. As the investigation into the shooting continues, officials in Nanterre said they will continue to support Nahel's family and his mother. Sweden is taking political flack from several Muslim countries over its decision to allow a one-man protest that involved the burning of a Quran outside a mosque. Iraq, Egypt, Kuwait, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia all blasted Sweden. According to a state news agency, Morocco is recalling its ambassador to Stockholm. The burning incident happened Wednesday, which also marked the Eid al-Adha, a major Muslim holiday. Authorities say an Iraqi refugee, who is now a Swedish citizen, has anti-Islamic views. Officials in Sweden say they disagree with the man's protest and said it was disrespectful and insulting. However, Sweden is a country where freedom of expression is protected by the Constitution. At this point, it's not clear if this incident will delay Sweden's efforts to join NATO. A deadly heat wave is affecting millions in Asia and Latin America. In Mexico, high temperatures in June caused the death of 53 people throughout the country. The extreme heat has also hospitalized many people. Authorities say the high temperatures will continue, and they're urging people to avoid the sun. Mexico's president has declared an emergency in some parts of the country due to lack of water. The drought has dried up lakes and canals. Experts say the situation is forcing some people to leave the country. And according to an intergovernmental panel on climate change, IPCC, India is among the countries expected to be worse affected by the climate crisis, potentially affecting 1.4 billion people. Heat waves are putting unprecedented burdens on India and other countries in the Asia region. Last week in China, Beijing's temperatures soared above 41 degrees Celsius, or 100.5 degrees Fahrenheit, setting a new record for the capital's hottest day in June. Long-term projections indicate that by 2050, heat waves in Asia could make it hard for a healthy human to survive, even if they are in the shade. The Biden administration in the United States could soon approve sending controversial weapons to Ukraine. Officials familiar with the matter told CNN the administration is strongly considering the transfer of cluster munition warheads to Ukraine. Ukrainian officials have been pushing the U.S. to provide the weapons since last year. But the U.S. had been reluctant because of the risk they could pose to civilians. That's because the weapons are similar to landmines. They scatter bomblets across large areas. But they can also fail to explode on impact and ultimately pose a long-term risk to anyone who encounters them later. Both the Ukrainians and the Russians have used cluster bombs since Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. But Ukrainians have been using Turkish-provided cluster munitions. A final decision is expected soon from the White House. If approved, the weapons could be included in a new military package as soon as next month. In Russia, the Kremlin has spent this week trying to repair the damage to the image of President Vladimir Putin. He faced the greatest challenge to his authority in 23 years when Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin staged an armed rebellion. The revolt was eventually called off. The Kremlin is portraying the deal that ended the rebellion as an act of national unity, not weakness. The problem is that's not entirely true. Images of Russians cheering Wagner forces is disturbing for the Kremlin. Not all Russians welcome the mutiny, but not a lot of people turned out to resist it either, despite what the Kremlin says. And the Kremlin, which now admits to fully funding Wagner, says it will investigate how more than $1 billion recently paid for salaries and bonuses was really spent. And Putin may find it hard to forgive Prigozhin, a man who shattered his image of control. Military police in Italy have identified the person they say is responsible for carving his name and his girlfriend's name at Rome's Coliseum. Authorities say the man filmed the whole thing and then posted it on social media. Police use photographs and video from other tourists to identify the man and woman as tourists who live in Britain. Their names have not been released, but the carving on the Colosseum said Ivan and Haley, 23. Defacing and damaging the Coliseum is a crime that could result in a $15,000 fine and 5 years in prison. Culture experts say the man's actions offended people around the world who appreciate the value of archaeology, monuments, and history. "13-year-old Australian teen skateboarder Arissa True just did something no other female skateboarder has ever done. She landed a 720. A 720 is when a skateboarder completes 2 full rotations in midair. True accomplished the amazing trick at the Tony Hawk Vert Alert event in Salt Lake City, Utah. Legendary skateboarder Tony Hawk was the first person to complete the trick in 1985. Hawk said True brought the house down after her 720. True is now setting her sights on a bigger feat, hoping to be selected to represent Australia in the 2024 Summer Olympic Games in Paris. Sign1News will be broadcasting international news updates in ISL every Sunday. A big thank you to our Sign1News app supporters. You help make this broadcast happen. You can download the Sign1News app by heading to the App Store or Google Play Store on your smartphone. And you can also watch on Apple TV, Amazon, and Roku.